here's Ed Bernstein.
Well, seize your destiny. Choices that lead to a happy, successful, and meaningful life. It's my pleasure. Welcome back, my friend, George Chanos. And a little bit later in the show, J.T. Moran, who comes from a very prominent family in town. As you know, his father,
Yes.
John Moran, on the Gaming
Yes.
Commission. His grandfather was the sheriff, John Moran, as
Yes.
well at one time. Anyway, George, I'm talking about families that do so much for the community. I mean, you yourself have been, so instrumental in in the state of Nevada, having been, your background as an attorney, but then you became the Attorney General, and then you resigned. I mean, you decided not to run.
Well, finish my term.
From that, well, but you decided not to run, which I want to talk to you about in a minute, and then you had some personal experiences and ended up writing a roadmap to success, Seize Your Destiny.
Right.
What's in here?
Okay.
How do I seize my destiny?
Okay. So essentially what happened to me was several years ago I had a heart attack. And as a consequence of the heart attack, I decided I needed to put my affairs in order. And as part of that process, I wanted to write a letter to my daughter about what she might need to know to deal with the challenges and opportunities ahead. And so I started writing the letter. The letter turned into 100 pages, and at 100 pages I realized this is more than a letter, and it has application beyond my daughter and my nephew. It has application to all young people, and really to people of all ages. And so I tried to put in there all the information. Life is very challenging today. It's extremely challenging. And so I tried to put in information that I thought had helped me be successful in life, had helped me be financially successful, emotionally successful, and have a good life. And that's what the book is about.
So I mean, just want to highlight some of the chapters. Making the right choice, the meaning and importance of character, how to communicate effectively, are you committed to succeeding, how courage is critical. There's a section here on how to choose friends and whatnot. And when you look back on your life and you write something like this, and then you reflect on how you grew up.
Yes.
Were there things that you would have done differently? Obviously there
Absolutely.
are. Right, because I'm sure that the advice you're giving your daughter is not the advice that you followed all the time growing up.
No,
okay.
no. We make one of the important concepts in the book is the concept of choice. So we all make choices every day, and those choices profoundly impact the lives that we lead. Good choices generally lead to good results. Bad choices generally lead to bad results. So how do you make good choices? Well, part of making good choices is anticipating the consequence of your choices. So thinking ahead. So every time you're making a major choice, give thought to that choice. Think about the potential consequences, both good and bad, and then weigh those potential consequences. Consult others, consult people that know you and care about you, people whose opinions you trust. Consult multiple sources. If you're consulting multiple people and you're getting the same advice from divergent groups of people who care about you and who have your best interest at heart, be careful about disregarding that advice very casually, because if multiple varying sources of information are coming to you telling you the same thing, then maybe that's something that you ought to listen to. So making good choices is part of having a good life.
But at the same time, you got to be careful because you want to make your own choice. And
Absolutely.
you don't want to do what other people are suggesting you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, deciding what it is that's important to you, what you want out of life, is critical. Steve Jobs gave a great commencement address at Stanford University about that, essentially talking about not living other people's lives. Living your own life, determining what your life's purpose is, and then going after that. So listening to other people give you advice is not necessarily inconsistent with that tenet. So the idea of deciding what you want out of life is great, but gaining some advice from your parents, from your siblings, from your friends, about major decisions is also good. They'll either validate your decision or they'll give you reasons why your decision might need further thought. Mm-hmm. So that's just one area.
So for instance, when you were Attorney General,
yes,
you could have ran for re-election.
Yes.
And most likely have won.
Yes.
but you made a choice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when you look back at that choice, how did you make a choice like that? And then what were the consequences, ramifications of it?
Okay, so it's a very interesting question. I made two choices. I made the choice to accept the appointment from Governor Gwynne to become the Attorney General, and then I made the choice to not run for re-election at a time when I was the incumbent, when I had raised 5 times as much money as my opponent.
Well liked. You did a good job.
Yeah, where I had great ratings, and in a statewide election was the likely favorite to have won the election. I decided that that wasn't what I wanted to do. As I got into politics, I found that politics was very dysfunctional and toxic, and it's not Las Vegas politics. It's politics. It's national politics. It's politics everywhere. And I believe that the system is dysfunctional because of the involvement of money and special interests primarily, and that with that, absent reform of that process, I personally don't want to participate in the political process as an elected official. If there weren't the influence of special interests, if there weren't such severe partisanship divides, then politics is where decisions are made. It's a great calling, but the system has been perverted and the system has been corrupted by special interests. And in order to be successful in that system, I would have had to compromise my values, I felt, and I wasn't willing to compromise my values. So I felt I had 3 choices, and one choice was to go with the flow, be a team player, stay in politics, and work within that system that I found corrupt in order to succeed and excel in that system, which I wasn't willing to do. Another option was to fight against the system and be Don Quixote jousting at windmills, because eventually, if you don't have the support of other political players, and they are playing ball, and they are part of the system and choosing to participate in the system, and you're trying to rebel against the system, that's probably not going to work out very well for you, and I realized that. And the third choice was to go back to private life, which I had enjoyed, and make a contribution in a different way. And that's what I'm doing now. Seize Your Destiny is an opportunity for me to make a contribution to young people in guiding them, that I hope can make a difference without running for political office.
You and I both have daughters that are,
Yes.
finishing college or starting college or finishing college in that age category. You both went through the years of high school and middle school, and you have a chapter here that I actually copied and sent to one of my kids about how to choose friends.
Right.
Because it's that peer pressure is so important, but it's not only for teenagers and young adults, our whole life. I mean, how you choose the people you're around somewhat either brings out the best or could bring out the worst in you, right?
Right. So, first of all, we need to understand that 1 out of 4 people have some form of mental illness or emotional instability. So these people that our kids are hanging out with and calling friends, 1 out of 4 of them may not, have the kind of mental or emotional stability that we would, generally want our child to be that close to or
associated with.
Yeah, necessarily. And so that's one issue. But there are all sorts of personality types. There are givers and there are takers. There are people who are thoughtless and people who are considerate.
But most people are a combination of those things, right? I mean, you can't really generalize to your daughter and say, hey, don't be around a taker, because a taker could have positive attributes in other areas.
Well, it depends on how much of a taker they are and how consistent that personality trait is. So we look for, you want to associate with people who have strong positive personality traits, and you want to avoid people who have strong negative personality traits. And so whether it's, try to align yourself and surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you, people who are encouraging, people who have your best interests at heart, people who are considerate, people who are compassionate, people who are bright and hardworking and industrious, as opposed to the opposite of that.
Not easy to do, especially for a young adult, to be able to identify those traits. They
Right.
take a long time.
Well, there are signs. So people's actions will give you signals. And if you're alert and if you're reading those signals, then you'll pick up on things. So yeah, it may take time, and you can't judge a book by its cover, and you don't want to make rash assessments of people, and just because someone makes a mistake along the way and happens to do something that is inconsistent with what you believe is a good character doesn't mean you necessarily write them off. But if someone is consistently doing things that fall into one of the categories that I describe in the book, if they're consistently dishonest, if they're consistently derogatory towards you,
Right.
if they're consistently envious of you,
Then it becomes apparent.
then it becomes someone to
Yeah.
avoid.
You have just a general observation
Yes.
about the world we're living in
Yes.
today.
Yes.
Can you kind of
Yeah.
run through that?
Yeah, so what was interesting about writing this book was that it allowed me to see the forest through the trees. It allowed me to step back and take a helicopter perspective on what's going on in the world. And that's unusual because we're normally looking at what challenges we have in front of us, what our daily challenges, the tree. In stepping back and seeing the forest, what I saw was to me very striking and pretty profound. If you look in both the social arena, the political arena, the economic arena, and the technological arena, there are huge changes that are happening in society, both on the positive side and on the negative side. So on the positive side, you have things like massive advances in artificial intelligence. Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Stephen Hawking talk about artificial intelligence in a way that describes it as being the most profound change in human history, that artificial intelligence may eclipse human intelligence in the not too distant future. And when that happens, all bets are off. There's a guy named Aubrey de Grey who believes that the first person who will live to 1,000 is alive today.
Wow.
There's a futurist called Stuart Brand who believes that we will bring woolly mammoths back to life. So the world is changing in a very radical way, in a very rapid and radical way, both on the positive side and on the negative side. On the negative side, you've got religious tension, you've got racial tension, you've got political dysfunction, you've got political instability in Russia and North Korea and China and Iran and Syria. You've got amazing things that are happening both on the positive side and on the negative side. And then you've got 85 million millennials, our children, who are going to be facing this new environment. 17.5 million of them are fatherless children. 43% of U.S. households are without a father. So the question is, are these children equipped to deal with these radical changes, both positive and negative, that are occurring? And then you've got a convergence of some of these issues. So if you've got racial and religious intolerance, and if you've got political dysfunction and instability, and if you've got an economic climate in which the top 20 people are making as much money as the bottom 130 million people, and if you've got technology changes like Bitcoin and encrypted communications and the use of social media by ISIS, when you put all of these factors together, it arguably creates a situation that could be the perfect storm, that could be a very dramatically negative situation, especially if these 85 million young people aren't prepared for these challenges. So how do you prepare for these challenges? And that's what the book talks about. The book talks about not only what's happening in the world that's very positive, but also what's happening in the world that's very challenging, and what these 85 million millennials need to know about how to embrace those challenges, make those opportunities, make the most of those opportunities, and deal with and confront those challenges. And part of that is the core values, the ancient core values that have been handed down generation after generation, things like courage, commitment, compassion, community. Those types of values are going to be central to the success of subsequent generations.
Well, instead of getting depressed over everything you're saying, I realize you can't save the world, but maybe you can help your own life,
Yeah.
right? By seizing your own destiny. So we'll be right back with J.T. Moran. Whether you're on the road, watching television, surfing the web, or on the go, with our new app, wherever you are, we'll be there to help.
Enough said. Call Ed.